the smartphone in your hand, the shampoo in your bathroom, the clothes in your closet, the bread in your pantry. What do these and millions of other items have in common? These items, or the raw materials that go into making them, are packed into shipping containers and get delivered to countries and cities all over the world via giant cargo ships. These ships are owned and operated by large international shipping companies. These shipping companies, or carriers, form the backbone of global trade. Without these carriers, depending on where you live, everyday items that you take for granted will be more expensive or possibly even unavailable. The shipping industry is a brutal business. For most of the 20th century, large established carriers formed cartels in order to stomp out new carriers before they can grow and become a threat. They did this by fixing prices and refusing to ship goods for customers who tried to ship the products with non-cartel carriers. Most new carriers attempting to enter the market have a shelf life of just 3 months. However, a small scrappy carrier from the tiny island of Taiwan was able to shatter the cartel's blockade of the world's shipping routes and become a giant in the shipping industry. This is the story of Evergreen Marine Corporation. Evergreen Marine Corporation was started by Dr. Cheng Yun-fa in 1968. Cheng spent most of his youth in the port city of Keelung, located in northern Taiwan. Cheng grew up in a relatively poor family who made their living from the sea, whether it be fishing or working on commercial ships. Cheng's father worked as a ship's carpenter, a post that is responsible for maintaining the wooden components of a ship. Cheng's father tragically died while at sea in 1944, when Cheng was just 18. With the death of his father, Cheng became the main breadwinner for his family, while his widowed mother took care of Cheng and his 6 siblings. Cheng had his start in the shipping industry after joining a Japanese shipping company as an office clerk. However, Cheng was dissatisfied with his position as he believed his aspirations of growing his career would require him to go out to sea. Shortly thereafter, Cheng managed to work his way onto a commercial vessel as a crew member. Cheng first became a tally clerk, a position that required him to record the ship's cargo. Whenever the ship he was working on docked in the port of Keelung, most of the crew members would go into town for a night of eating and drinking. Cheng, on the other hand, would scour through books about shipping, soaking up all the knowledge he could regarding the industry he would one day dominate. Cheng eventually worked his way up to the rank of chief officer, a position in charge of the ship's cargo and crew, and ultimately the second in command behind a captain. Wishing to venture out on his own, Cheng and several partners decided to establish 2 new shipping companies. However, the partnerships disbanded after differing visions between Cheng and the other partners. From the ashes of the dissolved partnerships, Cheng founded Evergreen Marine. Evergreen's first ship was a 15-year-old used general cargo ship that Cheng received from the disbanded shipping companies. Evergreen's first target market was the Middle East. In the late 60s, foreign shipping companies dominated the shipping routes to the Middle East region. Taiwanese businesses had a hard time selling and exporting their goods to the region, as the foreign shippers preferred to carry higher value Japanese goods. As a result, Taiwanese businesses wishing to crack into the Middle East had to beg the shippers for space. Cheng, seeing the desperate plight of the Taiwanese businesses and eager to provide them with reliable shipping service, decided to make the Middle East his first target market. Evergreen's maiden voyage on this route entailed shipping iron bars from Japan to the Middle East. As Evergreen gradually increased their shipments to this region, companies from Taiwan and even Korea began working with Evergreen, giving much needed life and a vote of confidence for the fledgling company. In the 1970s, Evergreen began expanding their shipping routes to the Caribbean, Central America, and the United States. Containerization, the shipping technique that involves consolidating cargo, standardized containers for transport across different modes of transportation, became the preferred method of exporting goods during this time in North America. This method of shipping allowed for greater efficiency, faster shipping time, and cost savings as standardized containers of goods can be loaded and unloaded, stacked, and and transported without being opened. This allowed for more frequent trips and less time spent in port. Chang saw the potential of containerization and sought to aggressively expand to the American market. In 1975, Evergreen opened its New York office as it began to service between the U.S. East Coast and Asian markets. In 1976, Evergreen opened a California office. Shortly thereafter, Evergreen expanded to Seattle and the Gulf region. All of the new routes were serviced by next-generation cargo ships with larger capacity. Needless to say, Evergreen was a company on the move. Their reputation for reliable service quickly grew as more and more American exporters began utilizing their ships for international export. Their iconic green shipping containers became a fixture in many parts of the U.S., from its shipping ports to cargo trains and trucks deep into the American countryside. The Evergreen deeply entrenched in the American market and learning the ins and outs of containerization. The company now set its sights on Europe, where all shipping routes between Europe and Asia were dominated by the Far Eastern Freight Conference, or FEFC for short. As previously mentioned, conferences such as the FEFC essentially acted as cartels, gatekeeping the industry from new carriers and bullying the exporters into using cartel-owned ships. The conference held all the power as there was more cargo that needed to be exported than there was space on these ships. Evergreen sought to break up the cartel. Containerization was already well established in the North American market, where Evergreen has a strong foothold. In Europe, it was still the early days of containerization. Evergreen sought to challenge the cartel by utilizing its expertise with containers. The US at the time was the top global supplier of containers. Chang naturally had established contacts with these suppliers through Evergreen's presence in the market. Evergreen, leveraging their expertise, began offering European exporters lower rates and faster turnaround time. European exporters, elated yet cautious, began testing the waters with a non-conference carrier. First, it was suppliers of raw materials who decided to entrust Evergreen. Evergreen became the first company to ship timber from Finland to Japan. Then, larger companies such as French tire manufacturer Michelin began entrusting Evergreen with their shipments to Asia. Evergreen came in as an outsider, not part of the conference system, and challenged the whole establishment with their own rates. Evergreen's entrance into the European market led to a collapse of the whole establishment of conferences and resulted in an open market competition. Eventually, these conferences were outlawed in the European market. Chang passed away in 2016 at the age of 88. However, his legacy continues to live on. As the global economy continued to grow, so did Evergreen. Today, Evergreen is the world's 7th largest international shipping company, with over 200 ships and servicing 315 locations throughout the world. Over the years, Chang expanded into other businesses and consolidated Evergreen Marine and various other companies, including major Taiwanese airline EVA Air, under the umbrella of the Evergreen Group conglomerate. Will Evergreen continue to thrive as the world enters into a new era of economic and geopolitical uncertainty? Only time will tell.